Hello, everyone, again. We are up to lesson 5 of Unit 2, and in this lesson, we're going to talk about how to find the x-intercepts of a polynomial that's in factored form. So to find the x-intercepts, the roots or the zeros of a polynomial in factored form, okay, all we're going to do is we're going to take each factor and set it equal to 0 and solve for x. So set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. And an interesting thing that happens is that each x-intercept has the opposite sign of its corresponding factor. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at our examples here. So I have 8 quick examples that I'm going to do here. So for number 1, all right, notice in number 1, I have 3 factors. I have x plus 4, x plus 2, and x minus 1. Okay. And if I have 3 factors, that means I'm going to have 3 x-intercepts. So again, the way I'm going to solve it is I'm going to take each factor and I'm going to set them equal to 0 and solve for x. So x plus 4 equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. If I subtract 4 from both sides, I end up with x equals negative 4 as my first x-intercept. Okay. If I set x plus 2 equal to 0, basically the same thing happens, except I'm going to get x equals negative 2 because I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And then lastly, if I take x minus 1 and set that equal to 0, I'm going to add 1 to both sides, and I'm going to end up with x equals 0 plus 1, which is 1. So 3 factors, 3 x-intercepts. Okay. Number 2, okay, I got x plus 4, x plus 2, x minus 1, x minus 3 equals 0. Now I have 4 factors, therefore I'm going to have 4 x-intercepts. So if I take x plus 4 and set that equal to 0, I know from before I'm going to get x equals negative 4. Okay. If I take x plus 2 and set that equal to 0, I know from before that I'm going to get x equals negative 2. If I take x minus 1 and set that equal to 0, I know from before that I'm going to get x equals 1. And then the only addition this time is I'm going to take x minus 3 and set that equal to 0. And if I add 3, I'll get both sides, I'm going to get x equals 3. Okay? So I have x equals negative 4, negative 2, positive 1, and positive 3. Okay? I want to call your attention back to the lesson notes for a second. I mentioned in the lesson notes that each x-intercept has the opposite sign of its corresponding factor. This is what I meant by that. So in number 2, notice I have x plus 4, but my x-intercept is x equals negative 4. X plus 2, x equals negative 2. X minus 1, x equals positive 1. So that is what I mean by each x-intercept has the opposite sign of its corresponding factor. Okay. Number 3 is kind of interesting because look what happens here. I have x plus 4 squared times x plus 2 squared equals 0. Now this looks interesting because of the squared here. Is this squared going to affect things in terms of the x-intercepts at all? Well, think about what x plus 4 squared means. Think about what squaring means in general. Okay? Squaring means to take something and multiply it by itself. So x plus 4 squared means x plus 4 times x plus 4. And x minus plus 2 squared means x plus 2 times x plus 2. Okay? So that's what that means. Now, how many x-intercepts am I going to get? Well, if I take x plus 4 and set that equal to 0, I'm going to get x equals negative 4. Well, I have x plus 4 again. So even if I were to solve that again, I'm going to get x equals negative 4 again. Same thing's going to happen here. If I take x plus 2 and set that equal to 0 and minus 2 from both sides, I'm going to get x equals negative 2. I'm going to get x equals negative 2 twice. So does these squareds here, do they actually affect the x-intercepts? And the answer is no. I'm just going to get the same x-intercept more than once. Okay, so I still only have two x-intercepts here. X equals negative 4 and x equals negative 2. Okay. Number 4, we're up to number 4 now. Okay, so we have negative 2 times x minus 4 times x minus 2 times x plus 1 times x plus 3. Okay. Now notice here, one of my factors is a whole number. So one of my factors here is negative 2. Is it possible for that to be equal to 0? Of course not. We can't have negative 2 equal to 0. So this right here is not going to affect my x-intercepts. Okay? If I set each of these equal to 0, I know I'm going to get x equals positive 4, x equals positive 2, x equals, so plus 1, we're going to switch that to negative 1, and x equals negative 3. So it's not going that factor of 2 or negative 2 here is not going to affect how I solve and find my x-intercepts. So that's number 4. Number 5, I have 2x plus 8. I have 7x minus 3. And I have x minus 10 equals 0. Okay, so this one is different because notice these have leading coefficients other than 1. I have 2x and 7x. This one's easy because the x-intercept here is going to be x equals 10. This is going to be a little different. Okay, it turns out I can still use that switching the sign shortcut. The only difference is instead of saying x equals negative 8, I'm going to say 2x equals negative 8. So if this were just x plus 8, I would just go right ahead and say x equals negative 8. Well, if it's 2x plus 8, I'm going to say 2x equals negative 8. And the only additional thing I have to do here is I have to do one additional step. I have to add I have to not add, I have to not multiply, I have to divide both sides by 2. So x in this case is going to be equal to negative 4. Okay? And then over here, I can do the same thing. If this were if this were just x minus 3 equals 0, I would say x equals 3. Well, because it's 7x minus 3 equals 0, I'm going to say 7x equals 3. And then I'm just going to finish it off by dividing both sides by 7. So x equals 3 divided by 7, that's a decimal, so I'm going to leave that as x equals 3/7. Okay, so that's it for number 5. Number 6, x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Well, this one's interesting because this one is not in factored form. So in order to be able to use this trick, I have to change it into factored form. So I have to convert this into factored form by factoring. So if you forgot how to do that, basically what I need to do is I need to look for two numbers. I need to look for two numbers so that when I add those two numbers, I get positive 3. And when I multiply those same two numbers, I get negative 4. So two numbers that when I add them, I get positive 3. And when I multiply them, I get negative 4. So in this case, that's going to be positive 4 and negative 1. All right, and if you're not sure, just check. Is 4 plus negative 1 equal to 3? Yes. Is 4 times negative 1 equal to negative 4? Yes. So the two numbers are 4 and negative 1, which means my factors are going to be x plus 4 and x minus 1. So my factored form is x plus 4 and x minus 1, which means my x-intercepts are going to be x equals negative 4 and x equals positive 1. So again, using that switching of the signs trick. Okay, so that's number 6. Number 7. Okay, number 7, I have x times 3 minus x times x minus 1 times x plus 0.75 equals 0. Okay, so this one has a couple of interesting things. Okay, let's do the ones that are easy. So the x minus 1, that's easy. I could say that the x-intercept is going to be x equals positive 1. And even the x plus 0.75, that one's easy too, because I can say x equals negative 0.75. So that also works. The interesting one is going to be here. I have a factor of x. Well, if I set that equal to 0, I get x equals 0. So I'm actually done. I don't have to use any of those tricks there. So when one of my factors is x, the x-intercept is going to be x equals 0. Okay? Now, for this one, I have to do 3 minus x equals 0. Okay? I could do that switching of the sign trick, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to say 3 equals, and I'm going to change the minus to positive. So I end up with 3 equals x. Just like here, I did x equals 1. So the x-intercept is going to be x equals 3. Okay. And then lastly, number 8, I have x squared minus 4 and x plus 9 equals 0. Okay. This one's interesting. This one should be easy because I can go right ahead and say x equals negative 9. Okay. With this one, if this squared were not here, if this were x minus 4, I would say the answer is x equals 4. Well, because it's x squared minus 4, I'm going to say x squared equals 4. So x squared is equal to 4. I have to do an additional step, just like I did in number 5. The additional step this time is going to be to square root both sides. Why am I going to square root both sides? Because squaring and square rooting are opposites of each other. Okay? Squaring and square roots will cancel each other out, leaving me with x. And on the right-hand side, the square root of 4 is going to be either 2 but it could also be -2. So it's going to be positive and -2. So in this case, how many x-intercepts are there? There are 3 x-intercepts. I have +2, -2, and -9. Okay? And that is it for this lesson.